Thank you.
All right, welcome. My name is Leah Little. Greg Thomas is graciously joining me today to talk about his book, Code Your Way Up. I have been reading it on the Amazon Fire. I'm very excited to have him join us. Greg, welcome. Thank you for being here. If you are not familiar with Greg, let me brag on him a little bit. He is a developer, a technical lead, vice president, product manager. You've worn lots of different hats, I know. And when it comes to coding, the particular slant that you had on your book drew me in right away. And so before I get into kind of how I found you, I just want to say that whether you are somebody that is into coding and that is a language that you speak, or you're looking for interesting thoughts on leadership, you're in the right place here with Greg. So Greg and I met with through a professional community that we both done online courses, and so I asked him to be here. So I'm excited to talk about your book, Greg, and thank you for being here. And let's talk about it, because just from a high line for just a moment, it's about coaching, it's about leadership, it's about management. How did you come to write this, and how would you position your book overall? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you opened up and really laid that out there, because to be so proficient in a certain skill set uh, doesn't always translate over to the skill set then of managing people who are doing that particular industry or skill set, or coding in this case. And it really is a big leap in transition. It's so true, especially I think what you said through emotional management and awareness. And then, too, to your point, do you ever really master it? Or is it just how you implement it with one person at a time or one team at a time? And it sounds a little philosophical, but it's actually pretty tactical, right? Mhm. Great. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think that's what drew me to it is that it's not technical, but it is tactical in the fact that you sort of offer insights of, okay, let's break this down. Let's make it easier to not digest, but implement each kind of idea. So as I made copious notes on your on your book, I'll just kind of talk in, just more specifically, kind of to your point, so we can kind of go there. Um, there was along these lines. I just want to ask you because some of these things really jumped out at me. Um, the questions about, oh, you know what? There's questions coming in. Oh, so we want to work on your audio, Greg. Just make sure. Uh, is that better? Just keep talking for me because we're going to talk about your mantra and we're going to talk about the spaces in delivery and leadership. So, talk for me a minute about that and we'll check your audio as we go. Between delivery and leadership and those sort of the connections there.
One, uh, and I think the one thing that I think people and developers would have to realize is like you can't show up and be a leader just on one day a week.
Mhm.
You would have to do everything together all the time, and it's just and sometimes it's a mess.
Yeah, and
But did that sound better?
I think we're getting there. Is that okay? So I'm gonna just leave the audio as it's set up now. I just took off my AirPods, so that may help us because in that way we're
Okay.
one less loop in the audio feed here. So uh, yeah, so I think yeah, to your point, it's about leading the team, being there in the trenches with them, and then going through those growing pains together, those leadership transitions together, and that's the where the real work comes in, right?
Yeah, and there's some pieces where it talks about, as you're a junior developer, you have a lot of grunt work to do. You'll get kind of the work that no one else wants to do. But then when you become a leader of a team, now it's your job to take that grunt work off of your team and let them do all the, superstar coding and all the like complex problems. Like you've done that, and now your opportunity to help them grow is to take what is off on their plate that is kind of like, great, I got all these 95 things to do, and can someone take off 10, and that's you to help your team.
Yeah, suddenly you've worked your way up to this position, and now you get to say, "Oh, here, let me give that all that credit to somebody else."
Yeah, well, like, yeah, like you become a leader of a team, and you've been focused on your own delivery up until that point, right? Which is, how much coding am I doing? How, like, am I helping with projects? How am I contributing? But then when you become, the leader of a team, whether it's a manager or a team lead, your uh, your metrics for success change, right? Because it's not, you might not be directly doing all that work. You're indirectly doing it through coaching and mentoring and leading the people on your team, um, to do those other things. It's a bit of a mind flip, because you've been doing this all your career, and now it's like, well, we're going to do it a different way. But by the way, you still have to make sure that your projects and products get out the door.
Exactly. You're still on that timeline, and you're still,
Yeah,
I was listening to an interview with you earlier, talking about the different dynamics when it comes to, you might have somebody that is very driven to hit it hard 9 to 5, and, you might be
yeah,
other programmers or coders that are like, oh no, I want to work around the clock and take mini breaks. So you're sort of
yeah.
juggling personalities and efficiencies.
Yeah, and having to, like, one of my favorite examples was, we had a developer on my team who, um, he, I'm trying to remember now, his family was in Italy. So, um, when he first started, there was a period of time where he would come in at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he would definitely kind of stay later. But everyone's kind of like, well, like, the rest of us come in early. Like, why is he coming at 11? And then I went and talked to him about it. He's like, well, it's the only time I can really call my parents back home, and I call them every day. So we're like, okay, like, that's, now that we know. And we're like, then, like, yeah, come in at 11, and no one wants to take that away from you. And I think at the same time, he felt a bit of a wave of relief, because he didn't have to kind of, sneak in, or kind of like push out meetings without anybody noticing. So, yeah, definitely, like, you're trying to juggle all these personalities, and figure out how best to lead this team, because everyone's different. There's no one size fits all, to approach to everybody.
Right, and every team dynamic would be different with the next one
Yeah,
when that moves on. What I love though is that you break it down in your book with specifics, so that even if the team is different, and even if the emotional environment is different, you are able to sort of ask questions. What is your mantra? Um, where are you stuck? What's holding you back? I think these are really useful team questions in any business genre, but particularly in your book. So if you're willing to go there, I'd love to break down some of the detail that you
yeah,
share
yeah, sure.
in the book.
Yeah.
Great. So how did you come up with the concept of the mantra, and where are you stuck?
So I'll start on the where are you stuck, because I think that one is a hard question to ask. I mean, even to ask it of yourself, right? And it's very introspective, and requires you to go, um, okay, I'm really not doing this stuff well, and this is why I might not be leading this project, why I was overlooked, or um, why someone else got the promotion and I didn't. So it's one of those very hard introspective questions that I think, um, we don't always realize we're stuck. We might just go, okay, well, that's not fair. Like, that person got it for whatever reason. They've been here longer than me. Um, and to me, like, I've never seen that as a case of, someone's title, or there's the next in line. It's whoever just, is eager enough, and wants it, and has shown that they can do those things. And I think part of that, when you answer that question, why am I stuck? Um, the next part is a little harder because it's like, okay, so how do I get unstuck? And everyone can always come up with a list of things, but then they go, well, now I got to go ask permission to do all those things. And it's not the case, right? It's like, okay, well, if you know the 7 things why you're stuck, then why don't you go volunteer for some of those things, right? So like, see what else you can take on. Talk to your manager, because I'm sure they'd be very open to go, yeah, like definitely if these are some of the things you want to work on, like we can try and prioritize some other things. Like you'd probably be surprised, and hopefully you have that manager that can help you kind of accomplish that goal. But I think that's the big thing, is like, why am I stuck? And then they have this list and go like, well, how do I get permission to do the stuff on this list?
You take
like, no,
ownership
like,
back of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you can get movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the mantra was, I think, I mean, either talking to yourself or whatnot, but I was working with a team where we were delivering a product, and it was pretty funny. There's a piece of the product that would play music, and at the time we didn't have any music files, so like I grabbed a Tom Petty song called "We Won't Back Down," and that actually went out to a lot of our customer sites that were testing the software, and it just kind of became a theme, and no one actually thought to change it. We all just kind of like, oh, there it is. If that's playing, then like we're all good and we're all golden. And we actually had a customer call and go, we really like Tom Petty, but this song is just constantly going. We said, oh, like, yeah, we'll change it for you. It's just our default. Right. So, and I think whether it's a song or a saying, there's been other ones where I've had where, we've done, like make it simple, make it stable, make it fun. And you kind of have that when someone would ask someone on the team, is like, well, how are you doing this? And it's like, if it's stable and if it's simple and if it's fun, then that's what we're going for, right? So like, if you can get your team behind that, it makes a great piece of motivation and kind of bringing everybody together, and they're all in that theme, right? Instead of some very complicated mission statement, or we're delivering this product to all these people or stuff. So
right, almost more of a feeling,
keeping it simple.
Yeah, like a connection point. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great word.
Yeah, versus questions coming in, and cool stream. Thank you very much. Sounds like our audio is good and right there, so awesome.
Okay,
awesome.
Great.
Yeah. So let's continue, because there's so much in the book like that I think that you share that is really impressive. So where are you stuck? How do you get unstuck? And then I think after that you go along that same thought process of, are you ready for what's next?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
And that question is kind of, and I think that has its roots in starting with, are you ready to lead a team? And there's a point I say that, you always have to remind yourself as to why you're there and why you got hired. And the beginning of the book starts with like, how you need to approach interviews. And we all get kind of sucked into like, I need to know all these languages and all these answers, and I need to memorize all these things to be able to, perform well at the interview. And having run, hundreds of interviews on the phone and in person and over Zoom calls and everything, I started to feel at one point, I was like, I'm not interviewing this person for what they can do today, because, in 3 weeks it's going to be old and they're going to have to change. But what I'm really interviewing you for is a job that I'm not sure it exists, but I'm hoping you're going to be the person that we need, that we can put into it. And I think that's one of the key things that when you're interviewing, you have to remember is, it's not just the job today as being a developer and a coder, but it's being able to lead a project or lead a team or, whatever else it is. So like when the question is, are you ready for what's next? And what that's going to entail. It's kind of thinking along those lines, and when the going gets tough, to think about that, right? It's like, okay, like I was brought on because I have that's something they're looking for that they don't need, and I'm going to convince them of it and show them already.
And I think the timeliness of that right now, with all that's going on in the world, I mean, you know, it came upon us so quickly. I think that
Yeah,
mindset that you're talking about as people are reading your book now, thinking about jobs of the future or how things are changing, it's it couldn't be more appropriate or helpful, on point, on topic, as it is
yeah,
right
and
now.
even just current teams that have been traditionally together and all in, that whole shift of, well, now we're all apart and we're all in our own rooms or wherever, and we're having to kind of figure out how to build this new kind of remote culture and come back together and establish those connections we had before when we were working closely, right? And you've probably seen some of it, people doing like things on LinkedIn, like Friday drinks and getting dressed up and parties, and sometimes it can be that formal, and sometimes it's just very informal. Like I had one with a team last week where I think the presenter didn't show up. The power went out at his house, but the rest of us were on there and just kind of hung out for half an hour and just kind of talked. But um, so so it's definitely, yeah, people are having to find those new connections now, right? And
Yeah.
almost rebuild some of the culture they had before.
Right, right. So when you say, "Are you ready for what's next?" Those words
Yeah,
now are so prophetic might be a little bold, but definitely timely for what's
yeah.
happening. Yeah, yeah. As I pick up my dog and have him sit on my lap because he's trying to get my attention. So case in
Yeah.
point. So we're all connecting in new ways. Probably something I wouldn't have done too long ago. You talk about. I wrote down some notes here about linchpin and craptivity.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
touch on some of those. I found that really
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so the craftivity is one thing that I realized. There's always seems to be this point where you start off learning something and you start off on a high because you start getting some quick wins and you're like, oh, this isn't that hard, piece of cake. And then all of a sudden you're in it for a while, and you start to find yourself like, I'm not progressing as fast as I should. And that feeling I had at the beginning, I'm not getting it. And uh, and I've seen so many people kind of give up at that point because they go like, you know what, it just became too hard. And it's not like it was at the beginning, because at the beginning I was amazing. Like I jumped into this and I could just do it. And then they stop at the point where they're probably on the uptick to get out of it. And like leadership and coding especially, like I've been in it many times where you're kind of going through it, and then the accelerated and advanced learning is taking hold, and it's actually forcing you to kind of rethink some things that you did. And then you're kind of stuck in there for a while as you're trying to do all these little experiments and figure things out. And the big thing is like, you got to stay with it when you're at that low point, because you're on the way of getting out of it. But if you quit now, you're gonna miss getting out of it, right? And I had one case in the first team I was managing ever. I had this one member of my team, fantastic, brilliant developer, um, and I was always very intimidated by like his skills, and but I remember like being totally at a low point and leading the team with all the work we had to do. And I was doing his performance review, and he kind of said like, "Oh, by the way, like I think you're doing a fantastic job." And I was sitting there like, That's it. That was all I needed from you, this person that I respect so much." Like if it had to come from somebody else, I probably would have been like, "Oh yeah, like I know you're just trying to be nice and stuff." But to have come from that person that was on my team was like helped me make sure I stuck with it, right? Because it's like, okay, like that's like I'm getting there. Like it's not perfect, but I'm getting there. So like I'm gonna stick with it. So
Yeah, yeah. It's those
yeah, so that's where
moments.
that came from.
Yeah, I totally get it. Where you're pushing and you're trying and you're exhausted
And you're just slogging it out. Yeah.
yeah, and push through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the team spirit that you're talking about creating here, is that it is sort of the camaraderie that gets you through, the kinship and the team building that gets you through. Because there was a philosophy not so long ago, work harder, work harder, work harder. But
Yeah.
now it really is about collaboration and about that
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, there's like one of my favorite parts is that, people ship products and not process. And at the end of a release, we don't go like, well, thank you to, um, our process, and thank you to like all the, um, servers and everything. And like, it's the people that kind of get the product out the door. And when there's a last minute push, it's the people that put in the extra effort. So it's like, just remember like who's actually kind of at the beginning, remember who's going to get it out the door are the people on your team.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And let's
put more faith in them.
yeah, talk about that, because you use the term linchpin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that was actually a hard part to write, because I didn't want it to come off as a very ego-driven comment. But I think there's a point at every project, depending on your role in the project, or your area that you're working on, where you are the person that is you're the domain expert, because you have all the requirements in your head. You're doing the coding, you're doing some testing. At the end of it, when it's done, everyone's going to ask you, okay, how does this work? What did you do? Like, it's not, if you had to deviate from the requirements, why? So you kind of become that key person on the project at that point. And whether it's the whole project or just this one component, like, you become that linchpin to that thing. And A, congratulations that you're that person. That's fantastic. And B, now's the time for you to be humble about it and not go around and brag and let your head get huge and kind of, okay, well, you're just customer support and you're product manager and you're sales. Like, I am doing all this. It's like, no, like, yeah, you probably had to do a lot of that stuff, but now's the time for you to appreciate all the other pieces that went into the mix to make it a success, and that the team might be coming to you for help. And because if you want to kind of keep on this path of taking on more of those things, like, that's one of the big differences is doing that. So
Your time to shine, but it's with humility.
yeah, and share it, right? Because like, you're getting all that, but you just might be the front person. And like, if you're the manager of the team, they're probably, yeah, you led the team and you did all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, but look at what my team did too, right? Like, that's your opportunity to bring them into the light as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's so genuine in that it pays dividends in business, but it also is something that is just the right thing to do, right? It's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
solid team building.
yeah. Yeah, and there's always that point, I think, in any developer's career where they go, okay, like, yeah, like, I'm doing all this stuff, and it's like, okay, now is the time to, like, if you want to get the most out of that experience, is to share it with others and see it kind of grow into something more.
Yeah. Is that what you're
So,
doing with this book?
I hope so. Like, I mean, I've had some great feedback from people that I've worked with in the past that have read it, and new people that I've kind of engaged with on Twitter and whatnot that bought the book straight off of Amazon that I never met and that I've now started to talk to, and just yeah. So like I'm glad it's kind of resonating with that crowd. I kind of did some of the shared some early drafts with friends and whatnot, and got some feedback, and you go like, okay, but that's great, and thank you, and you're also all my friends. So but it's great to hear feedback from people that you've never met before.
Yeah, and it's great to have this platform to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's nice to be able to follow you as an author on Amazon. It's nice to be able to, select your book in the carousel if you're someone who is, enjoying this interview and you want to know more. I actually have the digital version that I've been reading on the Fire, which is great because now I can read it on my tablet, whether it's, the paperback version. And so there's, such accessibility. I think that, yeah, it opens up those conversations. And I wanted to talk to you because I think it is, a topic that is so important as a mom. My daughter is 11, and coding is something that is top of mind because it's a language. I think that our
yeah,
next generation,
yeah,
it's going to be important. And then like I told you before we started the interview, I was intimidated because I'm like, ooh, that's a little out of my zone when it comes to coding. But I was so refreshed and excited that it was also about leadership and some sort of universal mainstays that cross over so many different genres.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
certainly inspiring.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit then, particularly about coding. Who is this book for? Who would you love to see read it, and what would you love to see them get out of it?
Yeah, so definitely, I wrote the book with developers, coders, anyone looking to get into writing software in mind. Like that was probably audience number one. Like I've had some friends who are product managers and whatnot go like, yeah, this is fantastic and great. And but definitely, I kind of wrote it to that one audience, and the second audience is the one that's I just became a new leader, and I feel like I'm doing a horrible job, and so probably some niches there, especially on the second one, but those two audiences are the one that I thought like I hope they benefit the most from it, especially the second one, because like you're not doing that bad a job, you're just trying to figure it out, and you kind of have to remember some of the things you did when you were starting out to get to that level where you were this great coder and developer that was respected by everybody on your team. And now it's just you're having to learn a bunch of new skills. And I think sometimes with new managers is they move towards the skills they think they should do because they're being told by their managers things that are now expected of them, and they kind of forget the really important skills, which is like my team and the people on my team. And I think it's in the leadership section, because sometimes you have, like huge companies that have like very, directors and managers and directors, that sometimes it can help to just like, if you have that org chart, is just take it and flip it upside down, and the people you're really reporting to are the people on your team, and everyone else comes second.
Yeah, let's talk
and if you
about
just
that.
start with that
Yeah, you talk
kind of
about that
thought in
illusion.
mind.
Yeah, of the org chart. There's the org chart, and then there's the applicable real org chart.
Yeah. So like, who are the people you're really reporting to? It's the people on your team. Like they're the ones that are looking to you for mentorship and coaching and career advice, and if you can satisfy those people on your team first, then the rest of it will fall into place. But sometimes we get kind of confused with, I got to do all this other stuff and reports and statuses, and people are wanting this, and we're not ready. And but if you kind of flip it, it's not going to be perfect, but I think it changes your priorities as to who you're really there for.
Yeah, and I think that it's, to your point, simple but not necessarily easy.
It's easy probably to go like, oh yeah, that's it, but then it's like everything that comes after that you have to then do is a lot of work. It's there's a lot of steps there.
Yeah, and I love that you break it down. You talk about trying new things, encouraging your team, feedback versus even criticism. Do you want to touch on how to handle that touchy subject?
Yeah, like especially, and I mean, and I think we're probably going to start seeing it now with people having worked remote. I've heard from a bunch of people that, they're automatically working longer hours because they're at home, and now they're kind of realizing like, well, I feel like I'm burning out because I'm I'm almost at work. There's now work is in my bedroom. I just roll out onto the computer. Um, so to that point, trying to remember is, yeah, like there's the validation and feedback thing. Is that I've always kind of seen that, when someone's either getting close to burning out, or they're not really asking you for feedback because they're already putting in so much effort. They're just looking to hear, yeah, you're doing great. And sometimes you kind of have to ask that question to people, is like, do you want some feedback, or do you just want some encouragement? Because I can do both. But when people are
That's
asking for
really
feedback,
solid.
it's
Yeah.
important, right?
Yeah, I want to just go there for a second, because that what you said, I think, is a subtle, seemingly subtle difference, but huge in the outcome.
Yeah.
Encouragement versus, like, do you just need a little, it's going to be okay, versus real input
Yeah,
to make an impact.
and when I say encouragement, it's not always like, okay, like, yeah, just keep going and keep doing more work. It's like, okay, like, uh, it looks like you're either doing too much or struggling, so let's look at taking a break and doing something different and giving you a moment to breathe, um, before giving you feedback. Or so it's kind of recognizing that situation, or it's the moment where, like, yeah, like you do, you are ready to receptive to receive feedback, because sometimes it's like, like, you probably shouldn't have taken on all that work, and it was great that you volunteered for it and you asked for it, but it seemed like it was a lot and you stretch yourself thin, right? But we can't always hear that when we're totally overworked and overstressed. It's just not there. And then there's actually the converse of that. If I'm asking for feedback from my manager, I think one of the worst feedbacks you can get is, you're doing a great job, just keep doing what you're doing. Because you go, okay, well, that's really nice of you, but I'm actually looking to grow, and there always has to be something to work on. And yeah, like, I had a team member one time who just said, he said, yeah, like, I'm actually going to push you to do a little more and kind of give me some more feedback on things I can work on, what I can do better on like what I could have done on this project better. And then we had another review, like a few days later, and I think that's important for developers, especially to push back and go, yeah, like, no, like, give me some real feedback, and these are some goals I have, and how can I get there, and whatnot.
Yeah, which takes a very present leader to be insightful and not just have that be words.
Yeah, because when you kind of say, like, yeah, you're doing great, just I wish I had 100 of you and all that. It's just it's a bit, it's the
true.
validation that you might be looking for when you're kind of burning out, but it's not the feedback you need to grow.
And it's not going to grow your team, which is
Exactly. Yeah.
the ultimate goal, and take you there. So I think that probably goes hand in hand with trying new things and encouraging the team, doing some self-directed training.
Yeah, especially now, because like, a lot of conferences have had to flip it up, and conferences are great if you know what you're going for. So, like, I went on conferences with my team and stuff, and it'd always be a great time. Like, but we would, it would be a good time for us to hang out and laugh and get to know each other. But I've always found conferences are a bit like a fire hose, where it's just like a stream of information coming at you. And there would always be this, like, okay, well, like, what conference am I going to this year? And what if we don't do conferences? Like, I'm not going to get any training. It's like, well, you could just train yourself. I mean,
Right.
there's so many options out there now, like with Udemy and Pluralsight and all these other sites that do training for, $14 for, a 12-hour course.
And
Uh,
resources even here on Amazon that you can
yeah,
just
and on
tap
Amazon,
right
yeah.
into.
So
Yeah.
there's a ton of options out there, and even just free options from people like free coding camp is
Yeah.
just amazing too, right? And a lot of them have been opening stuff up even more since people have been home. So it's like the whole training aspect is you don't have to wait for your employer to kind of lay out your training plan for you. If you know what you want to do and you know where you want to go, then put the proposal together and boil it down to the per day cost of like, am I worth $4 a day? And get them to go,
Mhm.
well, what does that add up to? And go like, okay, but like, can we find a middle ground of how I can do these things and provide feedback and checkpoints on how I'm doing, so it's not just your employer spending money. But
Yeah, investing in your own career. I love that. I think,
yeah,
yeah, whether $3 a day, $4 a day, like you said, it's amazing what that can reinvestment can do. And sometimes we know, right? Or we can ask, where do I need guidance? We ask that team leader.
yeah,
Even if the company's not offering it, what would be helpful?
yeah. It's yeah, and I think that's where like I worked with somebody one time who it was the same thing. It was during conference season, and he actually made the proposal of like, what if I just take a week off work and I go do all these things, and then I come back to you with um, everything I did, and I have some ideas for our products. Can I build those and prototype them, and then I'll come back and do like a show and tell with you. And so at the end of the day, he was basically saying, just let me go do this at home for a week. You don't need to send me anywhere. You don't need to pay for a conference. You don't need to pay for my food. Um, I will just be happy and engaged doing that, and then coming back to you, showing you what I can do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot more companies do a lot of that on their own now. Like they all have like internal uh, coding camps and internal hackathons and tests and whatnot.
Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah,
exciting to see as these times we live and develop what
yeah,
where that leads to, and the collaboration of that now, too.
yes,
Yes, as that can grow.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's
super
yeah. It'll
exciting.
be interesting to see how that all
Yeah.
translates.
So, anything else we should cover in here? A couple of things, probably as we're wrapping up. Can anyone be a leader?
Yes, yes, and that's the like I think that's been one of the uh, saddest or hardest things I've always heard is that like, well, this person's like they're just a brilliant, amazing coder. Like you don't want to lead people. Like no, you should just stay in like what you're doing. And I just kind of feel like no, um, like we're all very different, and I've worked with some leaders who are very very technical, and they are fantastic to work with, and they have the respect of their team, and others that are look like I'm not going to be the one that does the town hall presentations, and I'm a little more quiet in my approach, and then you kind of talk to their team members and go like, no, like she is or he is like they are fantastic to work with. They are everything we need. They take the time and explain it to it as slowly and carefully, whereas this other leader might kind of go like very quickly and direct me somewhere else. So we all have different styles, and I always kind of find it a shame when I hear that like not everybody can lead when it's everyone can lead. It's just there's everyone has a different approach and a different style to how they do it, and it's about trying to nurture that style with them.
Yeah, yeah, and different timing, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, one little nugget that maybe I want to touch on before we wrap up is you talked about as you're thinking about being a leader or just conceptually, um, focus on what you don't want to be or what you
yeah,
don't want to do, which is
yeah,
interesting because that kind of goes against some mainstream psychology a little. So
Um,
tell us about
yeah,
that.
so the thought was there is like over the years I've always been asked like, well, what's your leadership style? And you kind of taken aback, and I'm not quite sure. Um, but one easy way if you're stumbling with leadership and your team, and like, okay, there's all these other great team leaders around me. How do I be like them? Um, Sometimes it can be just as simple as just by like, okay, like I feel like I'm doing a horrible job, but um, you know, what am I not doing? Well, I'm not berating my employees. I respect my team. Uh, I'm I'm trying to encourage them to make mistakes and learn from them, and not kind of jump on them when they do something wrong. So like I don't want it to be kind of like this big box you put on your head and like, this is who I am. But it's sometimes a quick way to reassure yourself is go like, well, I'm not doing all these things that I had to go through, that maybe I had some bad leaders before, and so I'm not doing that to my team. So that's that's a good first step. And like from there you can keep building on it. So sometimes it's not about finding your exact style of leadership. I follow this methodology, I follow this, I do that. Sometimes it's just about like, well, if I'm not doing those like really negative things or those things that didn't work for me, then I have this wide open field to do and try all these other things that I never thought of before. So that's kind of where that thought kind of came from.
Not boxing, not putting it in a box, but sort of the
Yeah,
appropriate
yeah, like
action at
not.
the appropriate time with the team.
Yeah, yeah, and just realize that, like, I mean, I've led a bunch of teams, and they've all been different, and they're all different personalities and different walks of life, and it's great. Like if they were, I don't think you can go into one company to the other with like, okay, this is how we do it, and this is how I lead teams, because you have a brand new set of people and a brand new set of circumstances and a whole new different environment that you have to adapt and change with. And that's part of the big role as a leader, is to be able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there are so many nuggets in your book and so much for leaders of all walks of life. In my opinion, as I kind of compare it with other businesses, and I'm really grateful that we got to spend some time and explore a few of these topics that are in the book. And certainly, I would encourage you, if you are interested in reading this book, whether you want to do it digitally, like I am here on my tablet, or whether you want to pick up the paperback copy, you can do that. It's in the carousel below, and you can experience more of Greg's work. And before I leave you, I want to leave you with any last insights, anything else you want to share that you'd like people to know.
Anything else to share? I don't know. We've talked about a whole lot. If you're interested in following more, like I'm starting to do a lot more on Twitter. So there's a Code Your Way Up Twitter account, and on Instagram, and you can sign up for the newsletter on codeyourwayup.com. And
follow you here on Amazon, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah, and by all means follow. And like if you have feedback or questions, like I'm always up for it, and welcome it completely. So
terrific,
yeah.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being open to this new format, and your gift of your book will be quite an inspiration, I'm sure, for a lot of people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you soon. Thank you,
Bye.
Greg. If you'd like Greg's book, remember to pick it up. It's in the carousel, either digitally or certainly through the paperback copy. Bye now.